Hello and welcome to another Bad Comic Review. This time we're looking at All-Out Avengers issue 1. This is a 2022 series from Marvel Comics written by Derek Landy, pencils by Greg Land, inks by Jay Leaston. Frank D'Amardo was the colorist, letters by VC's Corey Pettit, cover by Greg Land and Frank D'Amardo. Assistant editor was Martin Biro, associate editor Annalise Bissa, Tom Brevoort editor. Cover's actually pretty good. It's dynamic, stuff's happening. It is just a pin-up image, but there is some sense of motion there, which is lacking more often than not. And we get to see the Avengers lineup that they're using. So something called the Dark Tide is coming, and the Avengers are currently having to deal with the ramifications thereof. We're kind of dropped in the middle of it, and we don't get any indication as to what's happening right away. It slowly is filtered in throughout the story. But Carol Danvers has been corrupted by this Dark Tide, and Iron Man and Thor are having to deal with that, while Captain America, Blade, and Spider-Woman are on an alien ship of the Cenarian fleet, and they are after something called the Scalpel that is going to help them on a conquest that they're trying to do, and it looks like their leader, this Queen Arak, the 7th, is corrupted by the Dark Tide as well. So a massive fight ensues while we learn that there is this bug-eyed alien creature using the bow of Gabrielle, who was a herald of Galactus, to corrupt local people as well as Captain Marvel. But the corruptions are only temporary. They wear off over time, so in a few hours they'll all revert back to normal, and so will any of the local corruption. This is a very action-packed issue, and the fight scenes are really well done. The art's not bad. My only complaint would be that occasionally Thor's hair looks very much like a 1980s ad for hairspray. So he has this very hair metal look to him that looks more like it was cut and pasted off of Carol Danvers in some panels. Other than that, the art was fine. I didn't have a problem with it. Spider-Man looked really good. T'Challa looked really good. Iron Man looked great. Even Cap looked good most of the time. Everybody in costume really looked really good. It was occasionally when you see faces that probably need a little bit of work, but even Danvers and Blade looked good. So it was mostly just Thor that I took issue with. But overall, it was a fun, self-contained story, and I was surprised how much fun I had reading it. Now, it is a Marvel pamphlet, so it's only 20 pages for your $4. So you are getting ripped off on page count. But for what it is, I actually really enjoyed it. I thought it was a lot of fun. My only real complaints would be Thor looks a little weird occasionally in the face and hair, and the narrator was a little annoying at times, trying to be overly cutesy. It's a thing they do in Marvel Comics now where everything's got to be silly, but even that was toned down enough that I didn't have a real problem with it. It was just mildly annoying. So I didn't feel cheated for my money for once with one of these little Marvel pamphlets. I do hate that they're only 20 pages because it is an obvious ripoff, but for what it is and the length that it was, it condensed a full story into an issue. Yeah, it's an ongoing story that will be continued on in several other issues, but you do get closure as to the specific events of this issue, which was really nice. So it's very easily accessible to new audiences, and I think the age demographic of teen is appropriate, so younger readers could enjoy it as well as older fans. And I didn't have a problem with the way the characters were written at all. It was actually a really fun issue. It was just short, and Thor had weird hair. I would absolutely recommend this issue. If you don't want to pay $4 for another Marvel pamphlet, I understand that, but it's worth a read. That'll do it for this one. Thank you so much for listening and supporting the channel. If you enjoyed the video, please hit the like button, and don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss future reviews. If you'd like to help the channel out in other ways, links are in the description to various support methods, and as always, we hope to see you on the next one. Hello and welcome to another Bad Comic Review. This time we're looking at All-Out Avengers issue 2. This is written by Derek Landy, pencils by Greg Land, Jay Leaston was the inker, Frank D'Amardo colorist, VC's Corey Pettit letterer, cover by Greg Land and Frank D'Amardo, assistant editor Martin Biro, Annalise Bissa, associate editor Tom Brevoort editor. I like the cover. It's a good cover. It does inspire a little bit of interest in it because why is Dr. Doom wielding these powerful weapons? Well, we jump right into the middle of the battle again, much like the first issue. And this time, Dr. Doom is wielding Thor's hammer and Cap's shield, as you saw on the cover, and they're fighting a different version of Dr. Doom. And we come to find out that there is some kind of trouble brewing that the unseen narrator is talking about, and it is obviously going to affect the entire world. But that's not the immediate issue because the Avengers seem completely unaware of that scenario. But what the current problem is that Dr. Doom has been split into two people using something called the Soul Splitter Stone. And Tony is trying to come up with a way to reunify the two Dooms so that he can free Captain Marvel, Thor, and Captain America. So Iron Man, She-Hulk, Blade, and Doctor Doom have to go in and stop the evil Doom. We don't really see Black Panther in this issue, but that's not a huge deal. The two Dooms face off. It's pretty cool. A lot of good action sequences. My main complaints are there's a lazy quote from The Big Lebowski in here that's not credited, and Greg Land really has trouble drawing Thor. I'm pretty sure he just draws a woman and replaces the arms, because Thor's head and hair look very feminine for some reason. But otherwise, it's not a bad story. You get a really good action issue. There's some great action sequences in here, and there's obviously something else going on, and even Tony was starting to figure it out that there's something more at play here. So I thought that was interesting. Like I said, the art's good. There's a few panels that are a little rough, but otherwise it looks good all around, and a pretty interesting storyline. So I'm going to recommend this. Even though it's a Marvel pamphlet with only about 20 pages, it's not really worth the $4, but as a modern Marvel book, this is shockingly good. So I'm having a lot of fun reading these. They're not the greatest thing ever, but they are very fun. So I had a good time reading this, and I hope everybody else does too. And it does intrigue me as to what this meta storyline is that is going on and who the mystery narrator is. So we'll see how that plays out by checking out issue 3, because I'm going to recommend this, and I'll probably pick up the third issue, but try to get it at a lower price, because $4 is overpriced for a 20-page comic book. That'll do it for this one. Thank you so much for listening and supporting the channel. If you enjoyed the video, please hit the like button, and don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss future reviews. If you'd like to help the channel out in other ways, links are in the description to various support methods, and as always, we hope to see you on the next one. Hello and welcome to another Bad Comic Review. This time we're looking at All-Out Avengers issue 3. This is a 2022 Marvel comic written by Derek Landy, pencils by Greg Land, Jay Leaston, inker, Frank Diamarta, colorist, VC's Corey Pettit, letterer, cover by Greg Land and Frank Diamarta. Cover's okay. I didn't have too much problem with it. It's a little less exciting than I would hope it would be. It's a little busy looking because of all the red skulls at weird angles. Otherwise, it is nice to see some action on the cover. So we start off with Captain America seemingly being held hostage by some red skulls. It turns out a bunch of life model decoys were activated by Arnim Sola, so the Avengers are fighting them, and they've even had to work with the real Red Skull. He does manage to escape, of course, but they were supposed to figure out that these life model decoys had been modified a little bit, and the frequency system they were using was enhanced, possibly accidentally, but instead Iron Man figures out that once again someone is messing with them, and other people are noticing it too, and they've figured out that it's happened at least 8 times. So while they're dealing with all these life model decoys, it becomes apparent that everybody is kind of on the same page with this. Overall, it's a pretty good issue. Falcon, of course, is in the Captain America outfit, which I think is ludicrous and really diminishes him as a character because he was his own character, and a much better one at that, when he was Falcon. And of course, we have to have an obligatory beating up fascist commentary because politics can never be too far away from comics these days. But overall, the story was good. A few minor issues that I'm not gonna harp on too much. The passing, punching fascist thing was stupid, but the art's pretty solid. There's a few scenes where Captain America's face looks a little weird. I don't know what it is about modern artists not being able to draw a masculine face as masculine. They always have these like soft, effeminate features, and it's done to Thor, Cap, and T'Challa in this issue. And I know Greg Land is a better artist than this, even when he's accused of tracing porn pictures. He's a better artist than what they kind of made some of these characters look like here. But everybody, when they're in costume, generally looks pretty good. So I would say this was a pretty solid issue. Is it worth $4? Absolutely not. This is a Marvel book, so it's only 20 pages and the paper is garbage. But it was a fun read, so I would say it's worth checking out if you can find it cheaper than cover price. And this story is fairly interesting. I am intrigued to see where this goes. Hopefully they're not going to drag out this mystery too long, because then they'll get tiresome really quickly. And if they aren't careful, they'll do too much burnout, especially at $4 for a 20-page pamphlet. It's way too short for that kind of a financial investment. So you might want to pick this one up in trade. Much like so many books these days, it's cheaper to get it in trade paperback than to buy $4 pamphlets. But it was a pretty interesting story, and there was a lot of action, so it fulfilled most of my criteria for comics. So I will recommend it, even if you just pick up the single issues as back issues at lower cost than the cover price, or more if you get it in trade. I would say it's worth a read, but it's not going to blow you away. It's not worth paying cover price or more for it. That'll do it for this one. Thank you so much for listening and supporting the channel. If you enjoyed the video, please hit the like button and don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss future reviews. If you'd like to help the channel out in other ways, links are in the description to various support methods. And as always, we hope to see you on the next one. Hello and welcome to another Bad Comic Review. This time we are looking at All-Out Avengers issue 4. This is a 2022 series from Marvel Comics, written by Derek Landy, pencils by Greg Land, Jay Leaston, inker, Frank Diamarta, colorist, VC's Corey Pettit, letterer, cover by Greg Land and Frank Diamarta. Cover's good. I like that. It looks dynamic. It's still pin-up, but there's at least some action going on here. Don't get used to seeing Hawkeye in costume though. He mostly runs around in a torn-up costume and eventually in what looks like Tarzan apparel. So we open up with Black Widow about to fall into the Sarlacc pit and some bad guys on speeder bikes. But don't worry, things aren't quite as they seem. It turns out these creatures are Darl warriors and they only hunt every 3 years and they attack the Avengers. Apparently AIM has got the scalpel working again, so they got stranded out here and the Avengers came out to help in their Quinjet. And they ended up getting stuck here and they have a limited time to escape the planet before they're stuck there. One of the AIM agents actually helps the Avengers. The others are pretty indifferent on the matter. They just want to get out of there and they'll use the Avengers to do it. So this time we've got Spider-Woman, Hawkeye, Captain Marvel, and Black Widow. And they're trying to figure out how to get off this planet. They have to remove some crystals from this device that was running a shield generator. They just ripped off a lot of Star Wars stuff for this one from the look of it. Meanwhile, there is this mystery woman that the narrator, who's still unknown, doesn't know who she is, and she's some sort of emissary for the big bad guy that we haven't seen yet. And she attacks Captain Marvel and apparently can hurt her pretty badly. So this is sort of a Galactus type herald, that kind of cosmic level. But of course the Avengers do put up a pretty good fight against this individual, and they do know that somebody is still messing with their memories. And now the premise is starting to run pretty thin, but then again, these are 20-page pamphlets from Marvel with lots of big panels. You're not really getting a full story here. This ends up being almost a backup story that could have been attached to another issue and made pretty much a regular comic book. But we do get a look at the bad guy finally. His outfit looks pretty cool. And we do learn that this strange woman is from the Cenarians. She was a Cenarian royal guard, but that doesn't mean anything if you've never heard of them. So just some new bad guy of some kind. But the fight scenes were really well done. The story is pretty interesting, even if it does feel like they ripped off part of A New Hope and Return of the Jedi to do it. Sarlacc pit thing was a bit excessive. That was so obviously ripped off of Star Wars that kind of hard to ignore. The stealing of the crystals from the generator to shut the generator down so they could escape, I could let that one go. That's a pretty common sci-fi thing, but the Sarlacc pit, really, right at the beginning of full page spread, come on. So I thought the story was fine. It was very action-packed. It was just short and it had a lot of big panels. That means it's not worth $4, especially on the garbage paper they're using for Marvel. So I'd say if you could find it for $1 or $2, yeah, then I'd be fine with recommending it. But beyond that, either wait to get the trade really cheap or just skip it. Because 20-page stories are not worth $4, especially not on the crappy paper they're using. So I would say get it cheap or just wait for the trade and find that used somewhere or at a significantly reduced price. Then it might be worth it. But the premise is really starting to run thin. They've got to get to the big bad guy because it's really losing steam with this whole thing of we know something's going on and we're being manipulated and we need to learn something from this adventure. It's getting kind of old. This probably would have been better off as a 4-issue limited series that they could have expanded on with like 32-page issues each. Then it might have been worth the cover price, but at $4 for a 20-page pamphlet, you're really not getting enough story with super large panels. It's just not happening, not at 20 pages each. So like I said, if you find it cheap, then I'd grab it. Beyond that, I would say pass. That'll do it for this one. Thank you so much for listening and supporting the channel. If you enjoyed the video, please hit the like button and don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss future reviews. If you'd like to support the channel in other ways, links are in the description to various support methods. And as always, we hope to see you on the next one. Hello and welcome to another Bad Comic Review. This time we're looking at All-Out Avengers issue 5. This issue was written by Derek Landy, pencils by Greg Land, Jay Leaston was the inker, Frank Diamarta, colorist, VC's Corey Pettit, letterer, cover art by Greg Land and Frank Diamarta. I like the cover, it's really well done, very dynamic, actually has action in it, and does tell you something that's going to happen in the book, which is all incredibly rare combination for Marvel pamphlets. So we start out with this big 2-page spread because 20 pages isn't short enough, and Spider-Man is giving us a verbal diarrhea of what is going on. Apparently he believes that everybody's being manipulated except him, and they think he's being manipulated. There's some great banter between Spider-Man and Thor, which is pretty funny actually. And then it's a chase book. Spider-Man is facing off against the Avengers and trying to take them down, and in tighter spots he's actually got the advantage because he's so wiry and nimble, and that was shown to us in Secret Wars. I think it was issue 3 where he took out the X-Men. But it was a surprisingly fun issue with a lot of dynamic action. Spider-Man goes through a lot to try and stop this grand manipulator, and we finally find out who is really behind things. And I was really surprised actually. It wasn't who I thought it was going to be, and I'm really excited to see where it goes. So I had a lot of fun with this issue despite it being only a lousy 20 pages with lots of big panels. The panels thankfully weren't as large as they usually are, where they usually have like 3 or 4 panels at most. They actually had a lot of smaller ones because the story required it, but it's still only 20 pages, and you get a big double spread at the beginning and a full page at the end. So they're still cheating you out of pages for your $4, but at least this story's good and it's a lot of fun. So I would say get this in trade paperback. You'll enjoy it more because it's better value for the dollar, and you'll probably end up saving a couple bucks. So I will recommend it, but only as a trade and if you can get it cheap, because the price point on the single issues for Marvel just isn't worth it for lousy 20 pages with 3 pages that are wasted effectively. But again, a fun read that's definitely worth reading. It's some of the best Avengers stuff they've done in a long time, and I'm really excited to see where this story ends up. So that's going to do it for this one. Thank you so much for listening and supporting the channel. If you enjoyed the video, please hit the like button and don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss future reviews. If you'd like to help the channel out in other ways, links are in the description to various support methods. And as always, we hope to see you on the next one.